Hi, welcome. Hopefully we're not frozen right now. It looks a little bit frozen. Um, we are discussing Along Came a Wolf today, and Adam came back. Yay.
Hello.
Hi. So, I really liked it. I liked Okay, first of all, I want to be Nicholas when I grow up.
I get that a lot.
I do.
Yeah, I
But
also like that. Can you find me a grandfather like that?
yeah. So I want to be Nicholas when I grow up. But I'm an engineer, so I think I will be able to succeed at that. um, yeah, but I
Okay.
need the space to actually do it before I can actually do it. Being an inventor requires lots of space. Um, I really liked,
Yes. Well, the part of that's revealed in book two, actually.
yeah. Um, I really liked the family dynamics too. It was refreshing
Hmm.
to read something where the family is not broken. So many stories have broken families in them.
That you know what? It's amazing. A lot of the reviews talk about that, saying, wow, gee, here's a non-orphan or a not
Yeah,
parents
you cut out. Or maybe I
were
cut out. I don't know.
killed, right?
It keeps
And she
getting
actually has
frozen.
ship. Yeah, it's actually been frozen on my but yeah. But yeah, the family dynamic is actually one of the things that was important to me in terms of writing it, both in terms of the relationship between T and her parents, and T and her grandfather, but that's also gets to be contrasted in the other books as stuff goes. So I'm not going to spoil anything, but family
Yeah,
dynamic is one of
I
the things
think
I
I
enjoy.
got a little bit of a hint that Ellie's parents and Richie's parents don't have that same relationship to them that
Yes,
T's parents have to her.
yes.
Um, yeah, yeah. I'm looking through my notes. There are so many little tidbits that I really liked. I really liked the use of language. Your use of language was really wonderful. It made me laugh all the time, especially with egg and bacon.
Thank you.
I
That's what I really
spent
enjoyed.
I spent 10 minutes giggling about that.
So, I mean, for anybody watching who doesn't recall or hasn't read the book, having the three Cochon brothers, which are, French for pigs, it lets me have that three little pigs elements, and they were in their early 20s. And so to have them nicknamed Bacon or Bacon, Squeals, and Boar, and then, of course, for Bacon to fall in love with Eglina Marie, Egg for short, yeah, it was a
Right.
natural relationship, right? Egg and bacon. So,
Yeah, it was awesome.
it was
Um,
interesting. Just a quick point on the humor. When I was up at La Claviche, which I was up this weekend, where they had their first library con,
mhm.
there's a woman who came up to me. She bought the book. She read it for, I guess, about 2 hours or so. She came back and she goes, "How are you making me laugh?" And I'm here like, "I'm not following you." She goes, "Part of her disability is that she doesn't get most humor, but she was laughing." And like she's pointing out sections of the book, like how come the way you wrote the dynamic where near the beginning of the book, where instead of William getting caught up between his daughter and his wife, he just puts a piece of toast in his mouth and clearly like he's too busy to speak, right? And she found that
That was funny too. But
right.
it's like that's
But
totally what you do when that happens. That's absolutely the right thing to
well, that's
do.
it. And it's like, how did you put that kind of realistic moment in there? It's like, well, I imagine myself in that moment, and then I relate to these people. It's like, oh, you know what? Yeah. And then anybody who kind of notices that for a couple of the books, there's like always a toast scene, right? I managed to work that in there. Um, so I think in book four it got cut because it was forced, but for books one, two, and three, it's there.
Hmm. That's a good thing, fun thing to look forward to. Um, and I like how the beginning and the end mirrored each other with her getting caught in the tree and
Hmm.
almost going off the cliff. And how at the beginning it's an accident, because she wasn't thinking about safety, and at the end it was on purpose in order to get rid of the loop.
Right. Well, one of the big things was, the first book for me really was about that transition from being like a 12-year-old expert child
Yeah.
to being the incompetent or complete novice adult. And so
Yeah.
that's why I really wanted the end and the beginning to mirror each other. And, it's like that la moment.
Yeah.
She doesn't do that anymore kind of thing at the end of the book. Actually, my daughter didn't like that initially. She's like, but no, I mean, like,
she'll understand when she's older.
that's it, right? And she's already kind of hit that age now where it's like, yeah, because she was 9 going on 10 when I started, and now she's 11 and a half. So at this point, she's like, yeah, I kind of see that. And it's like, okay, good. So, it's working. But
Yeah.
you have those moments where you really change who you are. And in between the beginning of book 2 and where you get to at the end of book 3, I mean, T goes through another whole transition. And not just her. I mean, Richie certainly does. And then Ellie kind of has her big moment leading right through book 4. But I love being able to put in that symmetry. Some people bring up the detail. It's like, I didn't lose track of, the red, I want to say the red box that T went to deliver in the first place, right? To close that loop off.
Right.
I enjoy keeping track of all of those details and finding ways to tie them up. On some of them, I tie up again in future books.
Right. Like you show Nicholas at the end of the first book, you show Nicholas reading the message, but you don't really go into what the message is.
Right.
Yeah.
And then in the first couple of chapters of book 2, you kind of get a sense of what that probably was.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and I liked how you did that mashup with elements from Little Red Riding Hood, but also from The Wolf and the Three Pigs. Like I liked how you combined those, because I think, I don't know, you managed to use lots of very clear fairy tale elements and references without it being in any way how you would expect to see those elements used, which I really enjoyed.
Well, thank you. I enjoy being able to take something that's really familiar and really simple and kind of figure out what's the story that led to that, right? Because it's very human of us. And I think we discussed this briefly when we did the interview, being able to take something as simplistic as Ring Around the Rosie and realize there's this whole complexity of the Black Plague and elements of that kind of get all compressed and condensed and down into that one little rhyme. So to be able to take a simple story like Three Little Pigs and pull that apart and then look at kind of what are the overarching themes, and then how do you not make it a retelling of that story, but rather it's, the Yellow Hoods in each of the books, they're marching a path with their own story, but you can see, wait a minute, I see how out of this section or these characters, this legend becomes the Three Little Pigs, and this legend becomes the Red Riding Hood, and how these elements are drawn into the Santa Claus myth.
Yeah.
And those kind of elements.
Yeah.
So, and that is probably the single biggest thing I think that's connected with adult readers, is that sense of, here's something they've carried with them since their childhood, and now being able to re-experience it in a way that's completely unexpected and not forced, and weaving in current cultural items along with it, as if those are just the myths to come, right?
Yeah. Well, and I think a lot of it is, I think that's how these fairy tales that we connect to were originally developed. Like, there are different versions of the Cinderella story from every little town everywhere.
Yeah.
And like, we're used to the standardized sort of Disney versions usually. I like the grim ones better, but
Yes.
like they've been streamlined and exactly how you said. So
It's become a challenge, as I've gone further. Breakroom Trail was a deconstruction primarily of Hansel and Gretel. And then for All the King's Men, that idea of the empire coming apart in a way that isn't simply put back together.
yeah.
So the Humpty Dumpty. And then Beauties of the Beast, that kind of idea that, great villains are made in part by the situations that they're thrust into, and in part by the decisions that they make at those times. And so for book 5, I, unlike the previous books where I have the title really early on, that one I've kind of gone back and forth between 2 or 3 titles, and I'm going to let myself start getting into the writing, which I'm starting to do. I've just started a little bit. I need to finish up the Man of Cloud 9 completely first. But I expect probably by the end of February, I'll be releasing the title for that, for the 5th volume.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that'll be fun. I'll have to catch up before you release the 5th one.
Well, one of the fun things that I've done is, Along Came a Wolf is, I kind of think of it as a reverse check mark, right? It's kind of it's on the lighter side. It starts giving some hints of kind of what's to come, and then Breakroom Trail gets darker, and then All the King's Men is the darkest of the books, and then Beauties of the Beast starts giving you a bit of that move on the check mark. So if it was a movie, it's like, okay, here's the beginning, everything's kind of happy. Okay, what's going on? Oh geez, oh okay, hang on. And then you start getting some of the heroic bounce and curve where you're kind of cheering, and the movie's about somewhere between a half and 2/3 of the way up, right? There's going to be kind of a bump, but it's kind of neat to be able to follow a bit of that classic that arc. Because at one point, my daughter said to me, "It's like you're not just going to keep making these darker and darker, right?" Like, she finishes reading the 3rd book, and she's like these cliffhangers and stuff. It's like, tell me there's some happiness that comes back, some elements from the 1st book. It's like, yeah.
Yeah, I'm excited to read the rest. I'm excited to find out at some point if because I've only read the 1st one. I haven't read the 2nd or the 3rd or the 4th. So I'm excited to see if Andre Leloup is actually dead, or if he's just missing somewhere, or if he's gone completely crazy, or if he's turned into an actual werewolf.
Well, one of the conscious decisions that I made was to really try to keep everything scientifically concrete or very close to it. And it was tempting when I was writing the 1st book, whether or not to cross that fantasy line. And then deciding actively not to. One, it does make it a bit more challenging to write, both in a good and a bad way. But secondly, I think it avoids the easy out.
Yeah.
Right? So, the character of Lulu kind of changing, right? But when he's in jail because his mind kind of snaps, right? He can't believe he's had this career, and basically he got overwhelmed by a sharpshooter, and in part because he couldn't handle this little menace that was this little girl, right? Like he's never lived that down, kind of thing. And it just becomes his white whale.
Yeah.
So to be able to keep everything being relatively realistic, and it was tempting sometimes to just kind of cross that border, but I've gone on to write other things that has magic in it.
Yeah. Well, sometimes like if there's going to be magic, it either has to be little magic that just makes the little things less annoying, or it has to be like the big problem is magically related, and like you have to have the magic in order to beat the magic. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. Like there has to be equality between the person who has to win and the person who has to lose if you have a win-lose scenario.
Yeah.
you know. And yeah. So it makes sense that there's not magic, but at the same time, I really like how you have the technology be like magic, because I think that's how it is in real life. Like I I refer to automation as magic all the time.
Well,
Because it is. Like I don't have to do it. I just like tell something else. I tell this device that I know how to communicate with, hey, go
yeah.
do that, and then it does it.
I tell this sprite that lives in this magic box, Siri, how do I get home? And magically it'll inform me.
Yeah. I wrote a post for the Purple Court blog a while back called "The 13 Reasons the Internet is Fairyland." And I said, "There's like the landscape changes every 2 seconds. You go like two spots further, and then you're somewhere completely different. And then also that there are internet fairies and internet imps and internet goblins, and they like take your emails and they destroy them, or they put them in the wrong place."
Yeah. Well, it's kind of funny, and this is just coming out of the random, back parts of the brain. But for the longest time, I'd wanted, because being dyslexic, sometimes I write the most incredible non-words, and then I want to make them into something because it strikes my imagination. And one of those was a hemogoblin.
That does sound like awesome.
It does, doesn't it? It's like these little guys, big teeth, right? Kind of like a vampire across.
They have to be like blood red colored skin.
Yeah, and maybe they kind of go blue, and then they kind of feast, and then they're all red.
Yeah.
I'm sure they live on the internet.
I'm sure they do.
Yeah.
They probably live in those labs that your doctor sends you to when you have to get blood tests.
We're just going to attach one of these guys to you. Right, don't worry, their saliva is an anesthetic. So, one of the things that I enjoyed in writing is, those scenes like where the Cochon brothers meet Nicholas for the first time, and those kind of more, adult moments, and it's amazing. The number of people that come to me and it's like, wow, I was not sure that this book, there are a lot of people who are just like, this book is absolutely awesome. I loved it from beginning to end. And then there's some people that's like, what, I wasn't really sure that this was going to be for me. And then I hit that scene, and then I was like,
yeah.
Oh, hey God, no, I'm fine. Right.
Yeah.
Then they kind of went, okay, wow, now I'm really getting it. And then they were kind of able to see, multiple themes as it went on. And then as they went on to the other books, it got even more.
Yeah. No, I really liked how you did that. I think you did that really well, not just with the scenes that you put in, but with like how you said things. Like there's that phrase, "The axe is dull, I'm afraid, the result of budget cuts."
Yeah. It's those little parts of real life, right?
Yeah.
It's funny because it's one of those things I really appreciate, having had a career in the corporate space for so long, right? You can put those kind of in-jokes in. If you've not worked in that space, it won't necessarily connect to you as much. It's like comedians who they started out as comedians. They often have to just talk about the most simple things, or like maybe retail job level stuff. So some of their depth of humor, or their areas they can go in, are kind of capped. But the ones who've kind of done something else first, or alongside, they've got this whole other world available to them. So that is, I'd forgotten about that line, but I remember putting that in there and reading it like a million times. But I love this line. I love it. Right?
Yeah, it stuck out to me. Yeah. There were a lot of other ones like that too.
Well, one that gets quoted a lot, which surprises me, but it's always neat to see people quoted, is, I think Nicholas says it, and I think it's in book 1. Sometimes you need to be the reed that won't bend. And that idea that not everybody's breaking, but everybody's kind of going a certain direction, and sometimes you got to kind of
go the other way. Yeah.
And it's neat. One of the things I haven't shared anywhere, but I'll share here. So for whoever's watching, is I've toyed around with the idea of two things, both of these as being companion stories. One that I am planning to get to is what happens with Tia and Ellie's parents. Because actually I had this whole secondary story about them when I was writing Along Came a Wolf, but I didn't feel strong enough as a writer to be able to fully integrate it. I kind of left it out. And a few people, not many at all, but a few people have said kind of like, well, what happened to them? You know, I really enjoyed those characters and then they disappeared. But from there and through book 2 and book 3, there's this whole other story going on that kind of has a connection point in book 4. So that I've been thinking about writing. But the other thing is that I've contemplated is almost writing an Along Came a Wolf 2. And there's 6 months between the end of book 1 and the beginning of book 2. And then there's about 3 months that are kind of, that move almost hand wavy in book 2. So actually I could even claim that, but it would be covering kind of the first experiences of the Yellow Hoods as a team, just kind of doing some local stuff. So I've sketched that out. Those might appear at one point.
Yeah, that could be cool. The other thing that I'm curious about is how Nicholas and Milo, is that his name? I suck at names.
That's okay. The city's name is
the guy who like is only in the last scene at the end, or maybe it's the first scene of the second one.
Simon.
Yeah, Simon.
Yes.
Him. I want to know like how the two of them, I don't know, I'm in my imagination, it's like they're both at the equivalent of Oxford or Cambridge or whatever, and they're studying together, and like they start out being like buddies, and then something happens.
Actually, that whole storyline is pretty well explored in books 2, 3, and 4.
2, 3, and 4? Yeah? Okay. Then I will be excited. Yay!
Yeah, so one of the things that you also get to find the relationship between Nicholas and Marcus Pyman. So Marcus shows up in book 2, and he's actually on the cover of book 2. He's the guy with the monocle. Glancing around. I've got someone behind me, but and actually for people who look really carefully at the cover of book 3, I'm going to point something out. It's one of those kind of Easter eggs that nobody's noticed. I don't have it. I got to go downstairs to get them. If you look on, actually, I'm going to take this off the wall. One sec. Movie posters in my books.
Okay.
So if I bring this here, very few people notice that the horse is actually standing on a painting.
Oh, yeah.
The painting is actually referenced for the first time in book 2.
Huh.
It might even be at the very end of book 1, I think, when the hound is walking through the hallway.
Oh, yeah.
So anyway, there's a bit more detail on that in book 2, and then that starts showing the relationship between, well, it's all woven into the storyline for Marcus and Simon and Nicholas and what exactly has gone on.
Yeah.
Yes, that was not a detail that I kind of left out. It was one of the areas that I had fun exploring.
Yeah. Yeah, I figured you probably had. And I figured it was probably something that made sense. Like it was clear that they had a history and that you knew what it was and that you would get to it when it made sense to get to it. So I'm looking forward to discovering that more.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, we'll definitely have to have a talk when you've read the other books and you can kind of see the plot line and see what you think.
Yeah, that'll be fun. So I think that's everything I have.
Cool.
But yeah, I really liked it a lot.
Excellent.
And yeah.
Well, it's funny. When I sign the books, often for book 1, I'll put, every fairy tale has a seemingly innocent beginning, and that's really how I kind of felt about the first book. And the others kind of have cliffhangers. Not kind of, they do have cliffhangers. At the end of book 2, end of book 3, even end of book 4, they're not as brutal as the other ones. So you get kind of a bit of a breather. but it was it was an amazing experience to write it. It was an amazing experience to kind of leave it with that ending that closes it off, but didn't kind of seal its fate, and then to be able to pick it up and run with it more as a series. And I've debated whether or not I'll end or try to find a way to end the Yellow Hood series with something that reflects back to book one, right? That close the loop piece. Now, my intent does remain that when I finish this series, to jump 10 years or so and write multiple series. And actually, I was just in talks with a company yesterday about potentially writing a episodic novel in Yellow Hood's universe with a character that I've kind of toyed with and mentioned online, which is Ella Cinders. So people should keep their eye out for that, because that sounds like it's going to happen, and that would be pretty exciting.
Yeah, that would be cool to see too. Like whether both that episodic thing and the reflecting back at the end of the series to the beginning, because the older I get, the more I realize how much I knew about myself when I was 2, that like life just got in the way, and I didn't forget exactly, I just didn't remember. So it's interesting, and I think you could probably do something really cool with that with them, you know, to just be like a moment of reflection or something. I don't know.
Yep.
I am sure you have a better idea of how to do it.
Well, it's all part of the fun.
Yeah. So thank you so much, and I look forward to reading the rest of the series.
My pleasure. Talk to you soon.
Yep.